Callie.
I'm Lauren.
And this is the Book Common Room podcast. Welcome back, my friends. Welcome to our spoiler-filled episode for Dune. I hope you guys enjoyed the Frank Herbert tangent.
Yes.
And his life and our random, what are we even talking about? Adaptations? I don't know.
Well, genre. Breakdown of sci-fi.
Breakdown of sci-fi. I hope it was interesting, and I hope your read of Dune was enjoyable.
Yes.
So we're gonna now...
You made it.
You made it.
Congrats.
You did it. It is a feat, honestly.
Honestly,
like,
yeah.
I think their writing style isn't extreme. It's not the hardest thing I've ever read, but the world is hard to digest.
Yeah.
Especially if you've never read sci-fi before.
Yeah.
It's a little like, what did I get myself into?
Oh, for sure. If it's like a new genre, it's gonna, you have to adapt.
You do. Now you'll read any other sci-fi book and you'll be like, wow. I can do it.
Yeah.
So we want to very quickly just get into our reviews first.
Yes.
Do you want to... How was the book for you, Lauren?
okay.
How did you like it? What did you think?
I'll give my initial impressions, and then we can go into our thoughts.
Yes.
And stuff.
Yes.
Initial impression. I loved it. I loved Dune so much. I don't know if I'll read it again, but I'm so glad. Watching the movies is what got me to read it. And I loved it. I thought the politics were so interesting. The technology was so interesting. There's no right or wrong. It's just very nuanced. I feel like there's so much about this book that you can go in and unpack because, I don't know, fatalism I feel like has an aspect to it. So I really loved how Frank Herbert weaved in this galactic story, and I thought the characters were super interesting. So many characters that kind of suck. You were I want to know more about them.
You almost root for the bad characters.
Yes,
and
I'm like, why? He gives them traits that kind of redeem them, but at the same time, you don't agree with what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like you kind of agree with what they want.
Yeah.
But do you justify the actions they're doing for what they... I don't know. It's just very messy.
I have had heated debates with my husband before I read the book about Paul. I was like, Paul sucks. I hate him. Paul's the worst. I didn't first movie, Paul, great. Part 2, you're just dude.
He leans into the dictator.
He becomes what he didn't want to become. And they do it. I read this book, and not that Paul is completely redeemed from the choices he makes, but I understand him better.
Oh yeah.
I read the book and I was like, I was mean. I didn't understand, and I could not understand Grayson's argument. He was defending Paul while also knowing that Paul's not a great dude.
Yeah.
And then I read this and I was like, okay, yeah. I do understand his character and the motivation. What I loved about the book is Frank Herbert did an incredible job leaving motifs at the beginning that just grow and then explode by the end. And one of them is Paul consistently feels this terrible purpose, mantle on his shoulders. And he can't understand it until he gets to Arrakis, and then heck happens.
But it just made me a freak.
I know. Oh my gosh. But there's just so many things about Paul's arc. I made specific notes for it because I was like, this is where you start to see Paul change. Yeah. But I loved it. I loved the book. I felt like it enhanced my experience of watching the movies, and it redeemed some characters to a degree. So there was that. So those were my initial thoughts. But I would love to know Callie, what did you think? What should we get into? I will bounce off. We will pull quotes. And I'm excited.
I love it. So my initial review of it is I also loved it. I don't know if I'll ever reread the book.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe in 10 years I'll decide to reread it. Because I do think the world is amazing. Yeah. I think if I ever were to write my own book, I could see myself rereading it just to pull notes on how he created his world. Yeah. And the politics, because I do think it was very expertly done. Yes. Very impressive. Yes. And how everything had to happen for Paul to become who he is. It was very tight-knit. Yeah. And I appreciate that a lot. I thought, other than Paul And the Nabaran was horrible. But I also kind of loved that he leaned into how horrible he was.
Yeah.
Just because it, like...
You never liked the Baron.
No.
You're supposed to hate him.
Yeah, you're supposed to hate him. He's horrible.
Creepy dude.
Creepy. Hate it.
Listening to him with the audio, I was like...
Whoa. I hate, like...
I was like, did he just say that?
Right? Like, in the movie, I feel like they tamed it a lot. Like, they alluded to some things that the Nabaran did, but, like, in the...
And the Harkonnens in general.
The Harkonnens, the Harkonnens are horrible.
Yeah.
And you've got the weird scene in the movie where they're, like, draining the blood to, like, put on the Skarsgård.
Or the Sardaukar?
Yeah, the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
And, like, that in the movie is really creepy, but they still downplayed it and how it was in the book. I do think, like, you've got Paul and the Nabaran, who are, like, the protagonist and antagonist of the book. I thought they were written really, really well. The rest of the characters, I thought were kind of mid. They felt a little two-dimensional to me. Like, I liked them, but I wish that they were fleshed out just a little bit more. I think he sacrificed their character for the politics in the world.
Yeah.
So just kind of depending on what, like, your preference is.
Yeah.
You could like that or dislike it. But I didn't love that. And the writing was very 70s. Very 70s.
I have nothing to compare it to because I haven't read any, like, mid-60s, 70s books.
Yeah.
But I just know, like... The wording is weird.
It's not... Well, because we've read classics before, and, like, there's always weird verbiage, but having the, like, old verbiage in a sci-fi world... It was a little clunky sometimes.
And, like, there were just... His word choices were just like, why did you pick that? Like,
why did you say that?
With all, like, your creative terms that you're using here, why did you say the sphincter of the tent? Like, that's so weird. Like, just say the end of the tent. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he was just trying to, like, keep you in this world, but by doing that, it made me come out of it and be like, why?
And he repeated so often. Repeated the same lines over and over again. Like, desert power. How many times did he say desert power in this book? I also thought
there were times that he kind of gave himself away.
Yeah.
And I was like, no! Because, like, and he would do it through Princess Irulan's...
The, like, textbook?
Yeah, it's, like, her historical, like, fragments that she, like, is... she's, like, record keeping.
Yeah.
And, like, right before... I already knew that Duke Leto was gonna die.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he, like, wrote about it, like, at the beginning of the chapter before he dies.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I didn't... Like, he dies now.
Like, why didn't he, like, put it after?
After the chapter.
Yeah, after the chapter.
So it was, like, leading into the chapter that, like, Leto died. And that was so sad. I was like, oh.
I did like his character.
Yeah, I liked him. Because he even says, like, and, like, Jessica says it later, like, their relationship was so powerful. And, like, he only had one woman, and it was Jessica.
I know. He should have just married her.
No. Well, because he was supposed to, like, leave himself open to, like, strategic...
Oh, that was another, like, weird thing about the world. Where, like,
concubines.
You have a concubine.
That's, like,
you
normal.
don't get married because you get married for political reasons, not necessarily for love.
Yeah, and if you do get married, yeah, that was, like, a weird cultural thing.
Paul and Chani and
Princess Irulan.
In the end.
and it's interesting because it's, like, it seems like it's not just, like, cultural to, like, Atreides. It's, like, every political leader
like the empire is like that,
this world, like, that's normal. Like, for you to, like, have a person that you love, but you leave yourself open to strategically alliance with someone.
Again, is so tightly knit because the Bene Gesserit, it seems like, is the one that, like, set that up.
Yeah,
because they're the ones that were like, they have this whole thing of trying to create the most powerful human. And that's how Paul was created.
Yes. And, like, their whole experiment with, like, genetics.
The family lines.
Yes. And, like, why it was a huge deal that Paul was born.
And why he was a man and not a woman.
And, like, how, like, he could tap into... Because, like, Bene Gesserit women can only tap into the feminine side of things. But a Kwisatz Haderach, which is what ends up... Like, what Paul ends up becoming.
Yeah.
He's able to tap into both.
Yeah.
But it's kind of... What's really interesting is, like, I'm seeing all these similarities in other... like, big world series. Like, I think of Wheel of Time is a really big one. That's fantasy, not so much science fiction.
Yeah.
But there's, like, this idea that, like, a man who has these powers goes mad. Mm-hmm. And like that's kind of like the thing with like Paul and the Quetzalcoatl.
I know,
like,
but reading it, honestly, it makes sense why he goes mad. In the movie, you don't really get it because he seems like he has like all this happens to him and he like gets his powers and he understands it.
Yeah.
But I feel like in the book, he doesn't. Time is so weird.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know when and where he is.
Yeah.
He keeps having to ask Chani, like, okay, what just happened?
Yes.
And so I feel like he's just, his mind is just everywhere.
And there's just so much because he confuses the future so much.
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
Yeah.
Because, like, Chani figures out, like, like all this stuff. Oh, my gosh. Like, so many things. But it's just, you know why he goes mad. And in the movie, I think Timothée Chalamet was trying to make acting decisions to show Paul changes.
Yeah.
Like, because he is different. He's, like, all of a sudden, like, looks drugged. He looks drugged all the time. And so you're like, okay, so he's not the same. But in the book, it's more...
Paul, what do you portray these?
Yeah. That, like, that happens in the book, though. And you're like, whoa. Because, like, it's basically him throwing, like, I own this planet. Like, I'm the Duke's son. Like, I'm alive. And also, like, I know everything about you. So you should follow me. But,
self-proclaimed messiah.
Yeah. Well, like, and what do they always call it? I'm going to look it up really fast. But it's like...
I know what you're talking
about.
With
the Bene Gesserit implanted, it's called, like, the mission.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is the name?
What is that called? See, that's the other thing with Dune is there's so many names.
The Missionaria Protectiva. The Missionaria Protectiva.
Yeah.
Missionaria Protectiva.
Yeah, it's like thousands of years before Paul went to Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit went there and, like, implemented this religion that then, like, because they knew that Jessica was going to end up there with her child and they needed to protect, they saw this in the future.
Yeah.
And they, like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
And they knew that they needed to be able to protect Jessica and her child, so they're going to implement this religion so that they'll be protected.
Yeah.
But then it ended up becoming their downfall through Paul, because Jessica
they didn't plan on having a son.
She had
it was supposed to be a daughter.
And then they didn't want the Quetzalcoatl to be Paul. But, like, he ended up being it.
That's why the Reverend Mother is, like, Abomination.
Because he was trained in the way of the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
And he was a mentat. That's another thing that's not in the movie.
But it is in the book.
Is in the book. That's how he, like, can see.
So much.
And, like, piece it together.
Yeah. Because it's not just, like, he really is the chosen one. It's like, no, they, like, literally crafted him to be this way.
Yeah, he is a chosen one, kind of.
Yeah.
But he's not, like, this messiah that the Fremen think he
is. Yeah. But it's just so crazy because, like, the Bene Gesserit, like, you really don't like them towards the end of the book because, you know, like, and also, like, Paul being potentially, like, if Paul was born a girl, they were going to use that for their own strategic alliances with potentially the Harkonnens, because they were, like, breeding the Atreides with Harkonnens because they were trying to put, like, superior people together. And
which is messed up, man.
No, yeah, totally. And so, but, like, that's why I love Jessica's character so much. Her, like, I could, like, talk for a long time about, like, her character, which is interesting, and, like, for sure could have been fleshed out more. But I just really liked the fact that, like, she really did love Leto.
Yes,
and so she was like,
because he wanted a son.
He wanted a son.
So she went against the Bene Gesserit to give him a son because she loved him.
Yeah, and which is crazy because she went against him, and that, like, ruined the Bene Gesserit's plans.
This is a kind of side thing. It's a little crazy that they can choose the gender of the baby they're gonna have.
Oh, I know. Yeah, crazy.
And then she starts, like, talking to the baby, to the fetus.
Oh,
before she's born.
But my thing is, like, they did all of this to protect Jessica's child.
Yes.
And the thing is, what's crazy is she does have a child while she's there, and it is a girl. Yes. It's not Paul, it's Aaliyah. But what's crazy is, I feel like if I was pregnant, I would be like, before I drink this, I'm pregnant. because they didn't know. And she didn't even think to bring it up. And so after the fact, they were like, what are we doing? Like, the previous Reverend Mother was like,
we're going to kill the baby.
Like, we don't know if your child will be sane after this.
Which, well, she wasn't really.
No.
She was just born knowing everything.
Yeah.
Which is so weird to think about.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that scene where she gets kidnapped by the Nabaran and then ends up, we're in our spoilers episode.
Yeah. This is the end of the book.
And ends up killing the Nabaran. That was the only, that I was shocked.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
How old?
She's like 6 or something like that. She's super little.
Okay,
let me look it up.
The time jump in this book is nuts because Paul is 15.
Yes.
Right up until he drinks the water of life. And then when him and Chani, like, have kids, they're 17.
Yeah.
So by the end of the book, I'm so curious how old everyone is. Also, listening to the audio, interesting because Aaliyah has, like, a lisp because they talk about how she has a speech impediment.
Mm-hmm. According to Google, she was 2.
I was going to be like, she has to be like an infant still.
Let's see here. Aaliyah is 2 years old when she kills the Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, she was talking when she was born.
Yeah, she was talking when she was born. Like, she knew everything.
Yeah.
She just knew.
Which
knew it all.
Probably was because of what Jessica did to become the Reverend Mother.
But everyone, like, even, like, the Fremen women were like, she's weird.
Oh, yeah. And, like, they like, come and be like, Jessica. And Jessica's is like, is this because she has, like, high functioning? And it's like, yes. She's weird.
She is.
But also, like, anyways, it was, that book, it's crazy. But
or the others, because Paul and Chani have a son.
Who dies.
That was sad.
Yeah, because the Sardaukar killed their son.
Yes.
Oh, and, like, then Chani is, like, mourning that, and they're, like, mourning their fathers, like, still. Like, it's crazy. But, like, with Jessica's character, like, it's just interesting because Paul gets to a point where he's like, Jessica is my enemy. Like, my mom is my enemy. Because
she didn't really, in the book, she didn't really want him to go out and do all of that.
No. He's like, you also created me like this.
She did.
And she did. And so he was like, she's my enemy, which is also why, like, throughout most of the book, what was the Mentat's name? Leto's Mentat?
Yeah, what's his name?
Thwaf, something. The older guy, him and Gurney thought it was Jessica who betrayed them. And Leto even told them, he was like, no, it's not Jessica. And then he figures out it was Dr. Yue. But, like, for most of the book, they thought it was Jessica. But it was like, I love what Paul says because despite him knowing that Jessica made him like this, Jessica, like, confesses, she was like, you can choose your own path, Paul. You don't have to do this. Just marry Chani. You don't need to marry Princess Irulan. Like, live the life you want to live. But he's, like, totally fixated on, like, bringing water to Arrakis and, like, just really leaning into the prophecies that the Bene Gesserit fabricated.
Yeah, which is also crazy. Like, they made up these prophecies.
Yeah.
And Paul's like, okay, I guess I'm going to fulfill them now.
So that way I can have this jihad or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is, like, not like a crusade. It's, like, way worse. And it's, like, the Fremen imposing, like, their faith on everyone. And it's just, like, it's insane because it's like Jessica's like literally like you can like is desperate, like you can do anything, but he, like, despite him knowing like she made him like this, he says something really incredible when Gurney is like accusing her, and he was like, I watched her like weep for my father, like she loved my dad, like she's done everything like she could to keep Atreides alive. And I was like, oh, good on you, Paul. Despite everything that's happening right now. But it's interesting to, like, as I was reading it, to, like, think of how they adapted it. Because, like, Chani's character really is so different. Because Chani understands Paul.
Yeah.
And, like, understands what he's doing. And even at the end of the book, it's really sweet, their interaction. Like, what does it even say? She was like, I don't need a title. There's nothing for me. I just want you. And I was like, oh,
I know.
Chani,
I feel
loves
like
him so much.
The movie wanted to have the same themes in the book, and so they basically gave Jessica's the understanding of Paul that Chani had. You need to do this, you should do all of this.
Yeah.
And then they gave a lot of Jessica's attributes. You don't have to do this.
To Chani.
To Chani. I like it.
Yeah.
I think in the book it works, and I think in the movie it works.
Because there's really similar motivations.
Yeah. I think as long as that is in there, at least, that you've got the two sides.
Yeah. But there were aspects of Chani in the book that I really did, like, admire. Like, I don't think she's just a woman following a man. Like, they, like, trauma bonded together. They, like, are good warriors. Chani, like, is really good friends with Jessica. Chani is a Saraya or whatever. She's one of the religious priests. She becomes one of them, which is like the next thing to becoming a Reverend Mother. That was something that was new for me, because I was like, oh, like Chani is in this. Like, it's not like she's anti-religion, anti-faith, like what she says in the film adaptation is like, this is how they enslave us. And her dad was an ecologist, so it's not like she's completely like blindsided by all of this. She's smart, she's bright, and this is my culture.
Yeah. What I think originally, this is all speculation that I have.
Yeah.
I think what Frank Herbert was trying to do was he introduced this world, and what happens when you give a man, just a human being, crazy powers.
Yeah.
And then the power and like from a religion to then go out and like influence millions and millions of people. Like, how would he react to that?
Yeah.
So we get Paul.
Yeah.
And I think that in the book, you don't get a lot of, like, how crooked that is. Because you're rooting for Paul in the book. You're like, like, I get it. I can see it.
Yeah.
And what I've heard...
Right up until the Baron's dead and you're like, whoa.
What I've heard is in Dune Messiah, I've heard a lot of people love Dune, the first book, and then they don't like the second book because
of Paul.
Frank Herbert goes into... Guys...
Paul's not a good guy.
You guys didn't really get it the first time, so let me explain it to you more. Paul isn't morally good.
Yeah.
He's not good. He's the protagonist, so you do root for him. And, like, you can decide whether or not to, like, you can justify everything. But that doesn't mean he's good.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't like Dune Messiah because they feel like it ruined Paul's character.
Yeah.
Or I feel like the movie was just trying to get ahead of it a little bit, if that makes sense. So they had to change things to show that Paul, his change wasn't a good change.
Yeah. It's not for the better.
And
it's interesting. I have to relate it to Star Wars just because I'm thinking
like
about it. But it's completely different. Like, Anakin was completely motivated by saving the life of Padme.
Yes.
Paul is more motivated by this, like, legacy and this power that he can have. It's different. But their downfall have similarities to it, because like both of them start off very aware of like other people, and they're very aware of like the good and the bad, and like even Paul like was skeptical of his dad's decisions. Like throughout his meetings, he's like, I don't like what my dad is doing. Paul didn't agree with what they were doing to some of the Harkonnens, even though they hated the Harkonnens, but he didn't agree with what Leto was doing to them. And so like he had a strong moral compass at 15. And like Jessica would talk about that. She was like, wow, he's like not a child anymore, in the sense that he's very mature and like knows how to be a good leader. But then Jessica starts to change and say like he's not a child anymore, because like he has become aware of this terrible purpose that he keeps mentioning throughout.
One thing that in the book that I thought was very clever was how Paul also wasn't necessarily there for like the big battles, or like Paul realized that he has become such a legacy. He's
people will go and
prophecy.
Do things in his name.
They'll do it in his name, and then when his story is being written, they'll just say he's there. When I first read it, I actually didn't like that, because I was like, the movie's so epic because he was there and he was so cool. But I do kind of like that Frank Herbert wrote this character that was so powerful that he doesn't have to be there. Which is like kind of like what's the main bad guy's name in Lord of the Rings? Sauron. Like, he wasn't there at all.
No.
But because he was such an evil, like, leader and was super powerful, he didn't have to be
And there
there.
wasn't even an eye in the book.
No.
And people were still doing this.
But it's kind of like the same thing. Like, he was so powerful and influential that people would just do it. And then they'll give him credit for it. So then when people talk about it, they think it was like his.
He was there.
So then his name lasts for forever.
Yeah.
I also agree with, I don't think Frank Herbert was like, politics bad, this good, because everybody is flawed.
Yeah.
I think everybody is a little bad in the book.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can think of one character that just embodies good.
Yeah. I'm like, Chani is not horrible, but like also she's supporting Paul.
Like maybe Jessica. Maybe. I feel like there's really nothing.
Because she can see the Bene Gesserit are corrupt.
Yeah. Maybe Princess
Irulin. We don't know too much about her.
Yeah, we don't know much about her, so I'm just kind of assuming maybe. It's just like how he showed how politics, they might have like a good start. So you've got the Chom, the Bene Gesserit, and the Emperor, and how they each have their own power, but how when they're all reliant on the spice, and how when they now start to fight for the spice, that's when everything becomes messy, and it all just becomes who can have the most power. So like the Harkonnens were controlling the planet. Now they're not. So war starts. And it's crazy. And that's how Paul gets his power. Is the spice.
Desert power. Yeah.
Literally.
Which is like what Leto called it, I guess, and then they referenced
it. And then it referenced over and over again. It's just how easy it kind of like back to what Plutarch said in the Hunger Games. Like, we're all fickle human beings.
And we have short memories.
And we're going to find something to fight about. And we're going to want power. Yeah. I liked that idea of it. That was also in there. And that was interesting.
Yeah. Also, I don't know. I always think it's so cool when you have a protagonist that falls. I just think that's so interesting, and like everything that took for them to get to that point. Because so much happens at like the end of the book. I'm like, oh my goodness, like... I know. It feels like a massive time jump. I guess that's a critique I have. Yeah. There's a major time jump for him.
And it's a little awkward.
And it's really awkward. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, I literally forgot that Aaliyah was kidnapped because, like, I was like, why is she there? Like, why is she talking to the Baron right now? Yeah. Like, what is going on?
And that in the movie would have been really hard to do.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they didn't. But I do remember...
And Aaliyah wasn't ever born.
She wasn't born by the end of the film.
Honestly, like, again, I they're already why showing they had to do it.
Yeah, they're already showing that Aaliyah's different.
Yes.
And, like, she has this weird bond with Paul.
The breathy, Paul, what does she say? I love you.
Oh, that's like a Anya Taylor-Joy thing.
Yes. So, it's, like, really close on her mouth.
I'm like, what's going on? But also, like, reading this, like, knowing that... I remember watching the movie and being like, why are they, like, trying to bring water? But, like, the Fremen want that.
Yes.
I didn't really know. Like, I was like, they're ruining everything. Colonialism. I hate it. But then I was like, I'm such an idiot. Like, like this is, it's not, like, that oversimplifies basically everything about Arrakis and its history. Even though, like, the Fremen have been dealing with Harkonnens for forever, they want... water, and they want, and like greenery, and like the Imperial like planetologist like would talk about it. But that also, like, there was a whole chapter with the planetologist and his dad.
Oh yeah, and his death, that was so sad.
He died in the desert.
And like his mind like spiraling as he's just like dying in the desert. But yeah, that chapter where I think this also comes like the sciencey part behind sand dunes. Like there used to be water on Arrakis. It used to be there. And so, like, you could potentially... There is a scientific potential to bring it back.
Yeah. There's water under the sand that builds up into, like, this gas.
So, like, they could... Because I think the Fremen figure out how to grow things from it. Like, tap into it. Paul's like, I'm going to bring it back. And they're like...
Oh my gosh. I need to remember what he said at the end. It's like, I was like, why did Frank Herbert feel like it was important to have an entire chapter of him like spiraling while he's literally dying on his homeland?
I literally just opened to it.
Kinds. Okay. So the very end, because he's saying that he's seeing birds and he's like, I need my people to find me. Fremen are going to come find me. They're going to want to know, like, even if I'm a threat, they're going to come find me. They're going to come find me. But then at the very end, he was like, oh, maybe the birds were trying to tell me this. And it's as he's, like, being killed by his planet.
Let's see here. He felt the bubble lift him, felt it break, and dust whirlpool engulf him, dragging him down into cool darkness. For a moment, the sensation of coolness and the moisture were a blessed relief. So he's dying.
Yeah.
Then, as his planet killed him, it occurred to Kynes that his father and all the other scientists were wrong. That the most persistent principles of the universe were accident and error. Even the hawks could appreciate these facts.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. The whole point of that chapter was to get to that point. And that's like the Bene Gesserit's whole downfall. Error and what was it? Accident.
No, this chapter literally blew my mind.
Yeah.
I have, just opening to these notes, I must have liked this page because I opened to it.
I'm glad.
It's page 350 on my version.
I think that's going to be a little bit further.
I think you've got the...
Oh, I'm in the chapter.
Oh, nice. I even like the quote. So he's hallucinating that his father's there. And his father said, no more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero.
Yeah.
Which is Paul.
Yeah.
He is recognizing as he's dying that his own people, they're so desperate to be saved. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that could destroy them is a hero with a capital H.
Yeah.
And I think that's... hold on. Let's see here. Was my past self wise? No, it wasn't, so we're gonna ignore it.
But it's like interesting though, because Kynes, the thing about the book too is like you're not really sure who the main writer is.
Yeah, it switches between
because
people.
Leto will call him Gurney, but then the narrator calls him Halleck. So it gets confusing, but it's like the same name. It's like they refer to them by their last name. Characters refer them to their first name.
Yes.
So it would get confusing. But Kynes, he is the reason Paul survives too.
Yes.
And which is why the Harkonnens left him in the desert. It was because even though he was an imperial planetologist, he was acting on like his own will.
And he was also a Fremen.
And he was Fremen.
Yeah.
And so and then also that's Chani's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that until it mentioned how she was mourning and she uses a green scarf for mourning. And I was like, oh, because I also was interested why they gave her a blue scarf in the film.
Oh yeah. Well,
but it's like a whole different thing, like motif, because like in the book, it has to do with like loss. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Well, so the green one is loss, and then the blue one later is to show that she's in love.
Because she also was like wearing a blue dress.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So cool.
Interesting stuff. But I was just like
everything that happens, I feel like with some sci-fi fantasy, authors will add things in that are just like, this battle was cool. But I think authors like Frank Herbert and Tolkien, everything, and Suzanne Collins, everything that happens is so that we can get to the end.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in there from the names to the colors.
Yeah.
Everything is very perfectly planned to get to where we have to go.
Yeah. So I remember reading that and being like, this feels like a cop-out. It feels like it's just like an info dump. And then I got to the end and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. But like, I loved like the chapter headings. I think something that was really interesting, even from like chapter 1, Paul is like, there's this terrible purpose that he's like feels is put on his shoulder. And then there's also this really interesting part that it like talks about man not being enslaved and like not being enslaved by machines. And I think it's okay, so here it is. It's them like quoting the Bible, and this is the interaction between like Paul and the Reverend Mother at the like very beginning.
What page is that?
It's on page 17 on mine. It might be a few pages back for yours, just because like I think mine are just on smaller pages. Basically, it says, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a man's mind," and Paul is quoting this, and like the Reverend Mother knows, like he's aware of this, and she was like, "Thou shalt not make a machine to counterfeit a human mind." And this was like after their like AI award, which they won. But I just thought this was so interesting because instead of it being AI, though, they're still using religion as like a weapon. Like, it's just interesting because it's like you're enslaving minds in a different way. But I just thought that was so interesting, was like this opening to the entire book was that thou shalt not make a machine to counterfeit a human mind. They still have mentats and do. Like, I don't know.
So I was listening to this guy one time talk about, I think the second Dune movie had just come out. And I was listening to this guy talk about Paul and his self-proclaimed Messiah.
Yeah.
And he was comparing basically Paul to Jesus Christ. And in my head, I'm listening to this guy talk, and I'm like, did you not understand anything about the story? I hadn't read the book at the time, but even watching the movie, I was like, what? I was so confused, and I'm like, okay, what is he saying? I did not understand it at all. And I texted my friend, he grew up Christian. Anyways, and she was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, Paul, it's literally a story about a man who uses a religion that was fabricated for his own advantage to gain power. And I was like, so I find it very interesting how people read things like that and like take it in and process it. Because I was like, I think you need to think about this a little bit more.
Maybe you should read the book and prepare for Paul, like, Dune Messiah, because it's not going to end well.
No.
And what's so sad too is, like, so many things in the beginning of the book are set up to create a better world. Like this idea where we, like, need man to think for themselves. It's a huge debate now. Like, AI, huge right now. Like, I look at, like, how universities are trying to handle it, and they're not handling it well.
No.
But I just know that I don't want to live in an AI world, because I think people need to know how to write, and because writing is an extension of how you think.
Yes.
And if you stop writing for yourself, you stop thinking for yourself. And so that's kind of dangerous. But there's, like, this other part at the beginning where the Duke says, it's on page 126 for me, but I, like, highlighted it because the Duke says, or Leto is basically saying, I feel in this moment that my own dearest dream is to end all class distinctions and never again think of deadly order. And I was like, that doesn't happen. No. I was like, so this was his dream. And Paul knew, like, his dad, like, had this dream. And it's interesting to show, like, they, like, talk about the houses. And, like, the houses all love Leto because they know Leto is, like, merciful and, like, he's a good guy.
The emperor even treated him like a son.
The emperor loved him, but the thing is, nobody would help him on Arrakis because they weren't going to get their hands dirty unless they knew that they would get stuff out of it. Which just shows, like, everyone's corrupt.
Plus, everyone was afraid of the Harkonnens.
And so, like, everything was working against Atreides despite how hard they tried. And Atreides is, like, pretty strong because they still, like, survive this because Paul survives. It's just so crazy. Like, this was, like, there were just such good intentions at the beginning, but then, like, everything just goes to crap because Paul was born a boy.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
So, like, anyways, I just thought this book was so, like, there's, like, so many important growth parts in Paul. Like, he's such a good kid. How he starts being exposed to the spice. He has this awakening. He has this dream. What a king dream or something like that. And he, like, realizes who he is, what he is, and that they're Harkonnens early on. And he knows that his mom's pregnant. And she's like,
how do you know this?
How do you know this?
I
Like,
barely know this.
Which is, like, they do the exact same thing in the movie, but it's, like, true. Like, that happens. And then he, like, is super angry. And, like, then they go from there. And there's just so many, like, moments where, like, this is changing Paul's character. The next moment I think that Paul really changes is when he kills man for the first time. When he kills Jamis. Time Jessica's like, he's never killed a man.
Yeah.
Before.
That whole thing with Jamis in the movie I didn't understand because he keeps calling him his friend. Like, he knows Jamis.
Yeah.
Like, he meets him and then he just kills him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
I don't either. So, what I think... You go ahead.
I was about to say, I figured it out.
Okay.
So, in the book, it kind of... He is able, since he's on Arrakis, he's able, and inhaling the spice, he starts to see multiple futures.
Yes.
And there was a future where he doesn't kill Jamis and they become a friend. And Paul is so, like, time and reality so blurred that to him he is a friend.
Oh, okay.
And they did have these conversations and this, like, whole relationship that didn't actually happen.
No.
But because it was a possible future, to him it did.
It was a reality.
Even though in reality he did kill him.
And that's how he, like... And then he got his woman, who he didn't want, but he was like, it's either your woman or a servant. He's like,
I forgot about that part.
But she was, like, pissed that Chani was, like, involved, because she was like, why do you want her? Anyways.
I did respect Paul how it was like, this is your woman, do with her what you will. And Paul's like, you can be your own person.
Yep.
I'm not gonna use you. It's
like,
okay.
You're fine. But she did like help kind of like give him a lot of information.
Yeah, and she like became the nanny, right? For Chani's kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then anyways, so much moving pieces. But I felt like that was like, it was like being exposed to spice, killing a man for the first time, and then drinking the water of life, and like all of those things is like what really ended up leading Paul down the path he took.
Yeah.
Because like all before that, he's like a pretty moral dude.
Yeah.
But then at the end, like I feel like because he can't, like PETA in Hunger Games.
Exactly.
He cannot differentiate what is reality, what is possibility. And
he became obsessed with this religion prophecy of like the Fremen want.
Yes. And so he
power.
Yeah. And his dad needed Fremen. And so he was like, we need Fremen because they know how to use the land, and this is the only way we're going to be able to cultivate Arrakis. And so he just became obsessed with that and siloed into that. And so then he became who he became.
Yeah, and he wants to be emperor.
Well, also the emperor like failed.
Yeah.
Atreides.
Yeah.
Like that was that was on them. Like they really messed up. And that like, it's so sad because it like everything just like backfires. But yeah, there's just like so many parts that Jessica's like, he's not a child anymore. Like she's like looking at the son that she loves and like fears him and what he'll do. Like Jessica's scared of Paul. Like, after halfway through the book. She's like, what's he gonna do?
Well, because she has some of that power that he has herself.
Yeah.
And so she recognizes, like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is not good.
Yeah. But the other thing, too, is, like, so Paul keeps having these visions of the jihad or whatever. Of, like, the banners of Atreides going everywhere. And he's like, it will not be. I cannot let it be. Like, he's fighting it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's halfway through the book still. Like, he's like, I can't let these visions become real. And then the water of life wrecked it. And he was like, also in the movie, it's interesting, he was like that for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, just in this horrible state. And just because, like, we don't know what is in some poison that someone gave him. And it's like, no. Like, and so Chani, like, left. And then her son dies.
I know.
It's so sad. But, like, when he says that, it's, like, this notion of power. It's, like, is power, like, does it inevitably corrupt? Will it inevitably corrupt you? Or, like, fate, is that a real thing in this book? Like, was Paul inevitably going to become this way?
Like, was this always just going to happen?
Yeah, like,
or did he choose it?
Yeah, like, how much of him using whatever, like, powers he had, like, caused this? Because it's like he was made to be a certain way. How much of that was what you were made to be and your choice?
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting that he did that throughout the book with, I don't want this, like, I need to not let this happen. And then he giving into it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a night and day thing. It was like it slowly happened.
The other interesting thing about, like, the whole power is when he basically gets engaged to Princess Irulan?
Yeah, Irulan, or Irulan. I don't know how they say.
And at the very, very end, Chani is a little bit upset about it. And I think it's very fascinating. He ends the whole book with this. So Jessica is talking to Chani, and she says, they're basically just kind of debating. Like, I think she's a little worried that, Chani is worried that Paul's just going to, like, ditch her.
Yeah.
And Jessica says, do you know so little of my son?
Yeah.
See that princess standing there so haughty and confident. They say she has pretensions of a literary nature. Let us hope she finds solace in such things. She'll have little else.
Which is true. You can tell that the book, every opening is her writing.
A bitter laugh escaped Jessica. Think on it, Chani. The princess will have the name, yet she'll live as less than a concubine, never to know a moment of tenderness from the man to whom she's bound, while we, Chani, who carry the name of concubine, history will call us wives.
Yeah.
So, like, even the women within this family have, like, they're also seeking that power. Yeah. And I think a little bit of Chani was worried that her power of wife and basically being his is going to change. But Jessica's like, nah. No. He's only using her so he can become emperor. Yeah. Now she's just going to be sitting and writing her whole life. That's it. Yeah. So haha. Like, okay, Jessica.
Yikes. But also, like, part of me is Princess Irulan is a Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
And it's not a good life being a Bene Gesserit. So also, like, you being there, you're a part of a system that Jessica was, and she fought against, even though she chose it. And so it's like, it's still just sad.
But it's interesting that that's how she ends the book.
I know. Between that, like, that relationship.
Yeah, like, and that's it. You don't get anything that Paul has said. You don't get, like, oh, look at Paul doing this cool thing. Nope. It's between Jessica and Chani, the two concubines who never got the wife status. But they're the ones that are going to be holding power because Paul loves them the most.
Yeah. Paul is still, like, an enigma to me, even at the end of the book.
Yeah.
Like, I still am like, I don't like what you're doing, but also, like, the things you say confuse me because I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that makes sense, but also, like, but then you're doing this kind of stuff. Like, the part, like, after he drank the water of life, he cried. Because Chani goes, Usul, you're crying. And, like, Usul, my strength, do you give moisture to the dead? To who's dead? And he's like, to one's not yet dead.
Because he knows what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I just got chills. Like, scared of it still.
That part, I'm like, ooh. I think of, like, the film adaptation. And they show him crying, but it's before he drinks the water because he's afraid of what he's going to become. I think it's more powerful in the book this way.
Yeah.
Because so many people are going to die. And he, like, is moved, like, to crying.
And water, even crying is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't cry because you're wasting water.
Yeah.
And he is crying in this moment. So that's why it was, like, so jarring, like, for him to do that.
And for Chani to know, because she knows that he knows the ways of the desert now.
Yeah.
And then the other part I need to find the exact page, because I was listening to it, and I remember listening to it and being like, oh, that is an important part. And Jessica is like, Paul's talking about justice, and Jessica's like, who's justice? And I was like, oh, girl, like, for real, like, who's justice? And, like, what was it all for?
Yeah. I think stories like this are always going to be written, and I think that's another reason why Dune is so influential.
Yeah.
Because as human beings and cultures and humanities, we haven't been able to really figure out, like, what is okay to do in the name of justice.
Yeah.
Like, what can we do and excuse to then eventually get what we think is justice?
Yeah.
Like, not to talk about The Last of Us.
I think it's a great segue.
It's a story that's come out within the last 10-ish years, where in the first game, or TV show, however you consume it, spoilers, but I'm going to say it anyways, the main character, Joel, he kills tons of people. Yep. To save this person who, it's a zombie world, so this character, she's supposed to be the cure for humanity. But to cure humanity, she's going to die.
She'll need to be sacrificed.
She'll have to be sacrificed for it. And so you've got this character, Joel, the main character, and he is like, no, that's wrong. Yeah. So he kills tons of people
to keep her alive.
To keep her alive. And to him, like, that is justifiable. And as the viewer, you can redeem him for it. Because you also are like, yeah, I also love that character. Her name's Ellie. We're going to go get her.
Yeah.
But, like, was it okay, though, for him to go and kill a bunch of people?
And also, like, there's also, like, choice.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't know.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, because I don't think she was given the choice either way.
Yeah.
And then in the second game, a big thing happens where someone makes a choice that is in the name of justice.
Yep.
That is horrible.
Yeah.
But the story's brilliant, like Dune is, where as you start to learn about why, it's like, yeah, justice does need to be made.
Yeah.
So then it's like, but that was horrible. So why, like, is it okay?
Yeah.
Because we want to get justice?
Yeah.
It's like, people are always going to be debating that.
And I think that's my favorite books. That's a main topic.
Yeah.
I think all my favorite books, Count of Monte Cristo. Hunger Games. Dune. Like, even Frankenstein. Like, all these books. Oh my gosh. Sword of Kaigen.
Yes.
But Sword of Kaigen takes a beautiful route because justice is met Lord Olympus. Like instead of it being like, oh, you're going to serve for these crimes, or you're going, like, he had to learn how to love Persephone, and then he realized how horrible he treated her.
Yeah.
And so, like, I love those stories because they always take, like, such interesting turns. So, like, some of the books, they, like, show justice isn't met by justice. It's met either by mercy or, like...
violence.
Yeah, violence. Which, like, I feel like you see more in The Last of Us and in Dune. With how, like, justice is being handled. But it's just interesting because it always is personal.
Yes.
It's not like it becomes personal. It's not like maybe it started off with a group of people, but in the end it becomes personal.
Yeah. And I don't know if... So, like, with Paul, as an outsider, I can... Like, if I was in that world, I don't know what I would stand on. Yeah. Like, if I was a Fremen... I don't know if I would be like Jessica, who would be a little bit afraid of Paul and say, hold on. Yeah. I don't think this is okay.
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't know.
Well, because you don't know anything else. Because you were trained in this way to think.
Mm-hmm. But, like, as an outsider, I'm like, yeah, we probably shouldn't start a war that's going to kill millions and millions of people and start hunger. And, like, it's going to be a horrible war.
Yeah.
Like, a great, terrible war that, like, you can't even fathom it.
Yeah. And it's not going to make the world better. And it's going to make Paul a tyrant.
Yes. And really all it's going to give is Paul more power.
Yeah. And it's killing, what is it, the sandworms, the Shai-Haluts, because they're, like, they can't survive when there's water, right?
Yeah. Because that's how they get...
Science of the desert.
Well, the water of life is the worm pee.
Yeah. That's right.
But it kills them to get it.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're so held sacred, and they're going to be sacrificed. But anyways, those are, like... thoughts on the book and like how we wanted to, like, I don't know, it is a ramble, but I mean, this is like a book club, so
I know it's a ramble. When I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, and I almost came up with a series of questions to, like, have like a little bit of structure. But as I thought about it, I was like, you know what? No.
It'll just be organic.
I just want to see where we go with this. And I also like when we go off tangents, because then we get, like, our real thoughts out there.
Yeah, that's true. And I do feel like there was some organization, because we kind of started off with, like, how it began, how it ended. Yeah. And then, like, if there were things that we felt like added to the story, we would pull, like, quotes there. But last episode, we brought up adaptations. I feel like we were talking a lot about the Dune adaptation, and we bring it up a lot. But, like... Our question is, what makes a good adaptation?
Yeah, was Dune a good adaptation?
Why is Dune
good? Was a good movie, but was it a good adaptation?
Yes, and I really like your take on what makes good adaptations, because I would agree with it. And so, like...
What's my take?
Okay, so, we've talked a lot. I feel like a lot of people talk about this, but we were in this conversation, and we were talking about what makes an adaptation good. A lot of people are like, oh, is it integrous to the true source? And, like, what does that really mean? For Callie, I really like...
Oh, I remember now.
It's the motivations. Yeah. So you go for it. Because
no, it's okay. You say it.
Oh, okay.
You're on a roll.
Well, like, I think you could say it better than I could. But basically, she used this term motivation. And she was like, what is the motivation of these important parts in the story? What is the motivation of these characters? Like, we were talking about, like, the Harry Potter adaptation, which there's, like, a big buzz around. And she was like,
the new HBO
take. And so she was just saying, like, okay, well, like, the Weasleys are known for, like, their red hair and freckles. But the real thing behind it is the motivation is that they all look alike. So you just need to make sure that all the characters look alike. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Or, like, motivation for, like, getting this character to this certain point. What are the things that got him there? And, like, if it's, like, the same arc, then why does it matter if there was a few tweaks in the way? So I was just like, oh, that's true. And also the key word is it's adaptation. It's not a carbon copy.
No.
And if you want a carbon copy...
Just read it.
Just read the book. Or just read the true source.
Yeah.
Because it's, like... I don't know. And so that's why I feel like I myself can be such a stinker when it comes to adaptations.
Me too.
It's like Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, Catherine's supposed to be young. I can't justify, like, an aged up woman making these decisions.
Yeah.
So, like, that is, like, a motivation for me. Because, like, Catherine, she's young. Like, that's why things happen the way they do.
And Margot Robbie's a great actress, but Incredible. She doesn't, like, fit Catherine.
And then, I don't know, so, like, those were the things we talked about in, like, regards to what makes a good adaptation. If you can meet the motivations that, like, carry the character through the story and, like, make characters the way they are, then it doesn't really matter that, I don't know, like, the Weasleys all have green eyes or something like that. But it's just, like, they need to all have something in common and have that motivation be integrous to the source, I guess.
Yeah. So, like, for Dune, a lot of people are really upset that, I always forget her name. Paul's sister. Aaliyah, like, was never born.
Yeah.
And that there wasn't the time jump. And, like, Paul and Chani didn't have a kid in the movie. And, like, there were tons and tons of differences. Like, Jessica's character was totally different. So was Chani's character. But is it, like, to me personally, I think the whole point of the story is Paul's arc.
Yeah.
And, like, the story we get there. So it still happened, so I think it's okay.
Yeah.
But, like, to some people, like, that's not good.
Yeah. And so, because it wasn't exactly like the book. Like,
yeah.
It didn't play out the same way. But I liked what you said last episode where, like, there were things in the movie that they did where they gave characteristics of Jessica to Chani to flesh her out in a different way, and Chani's characteristics to Jessica.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter because you got both of those things that needed to get Paul where he needed to be and also question Paul.
Yeah.
And so it just came from a different source, and that's fine because the motivations were still there.
And it fit the medium too.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you had it switched, I don't know if it would fit the medium very well.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Like movie form.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if... I think the movie would just have to be totally different to try to explain Chani's character and why she thinks the way she does versus Jessica and her character and why she thinks the way she does.
And also they had to change so much about Chani because they didn't have time to go through, because there's so much. Chani is a pretty complicated character. There's so much that she does,
like her family heritage, what she does.
Yeah. So to get there, they had too much in the way. So they just needed to switch of, like, some things around so that they were able to get Paul where he needed to go, but also having to adapt to the medium.
Yeah, because, not to bring up The Last of Us again, but the creator of the game, Neil Druckmann, who's working with the director of the TV show, Craig Mazin, they were having a conversation. He basically said that you can change things, but there has to be a reason for it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just change it because you didn't like it or you want this to be different.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason why there's a change, and it has to still be able to lead up to what the whole point of the story is about in the end.
Yeah.
And if there's a solid reason, go for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in what Susan Collins said about the Hunger Games movies. Like, Prim had to die at the end.
Yeah.
She had to die at the end. Anything else, like, to change, to get there has to be a reason for it, but that is something that has to happen.
Yeah.
And so, because that's, like, kind of the whole point. So, like, for me, adaptations, like, there are things I do think enhance the story.
Yeah.
That if it's not there, like, for the whole dispute of The Last of Us, if you know anything about it, the character Abby in the game is buff.
Yeah.
But in the TV show, she's not.
Yeah.
People are so up in arms about it.
Oh, boy.
And, like, I have my own opinions about it. Initially, I was upset because it was something that I thought enhanced the story. And so it's like, oh, that enhanced the story. I thought it made the story better, but it didn't have to be there. So,
and if it's not, I don't know.
So I get caught up in the things that I thought enhanced the story, and if that's not there, that's where I usually fall into the, why do they do that?
Yeah. Well, Abby being buff is important to me because it makes her believable when she beats the crap out of men.
No, yeah, there's a lot to it. I'm
like, there's no way this little girl could do this to this person.
Well, I mean, she was using a golf club. And, you know, you can do damage with a golf club, as we saw. Anyways,
unfortunately,
sorry if you don't know anything about this.
We already are gonna preface that this is a spoiler episode, but we'll put in the comments, like, The Last of Us spoilers.
Yeah, we wanted to actually say why, but there's just a lot of things where, like, Chani, like, Zendaya is a different race than Chani. Chani's not half black in the book. But I also don't think the race really had anything to do anything with it. Honestly,
they just called her scrawny and elvish.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even matter.
No. But also, that's pretty Zendaya. Yeah. Or, like, I do think Timothée Chalamet does look like Paul in the book. I do think that was a really good...
He looks young.
Yeah, I do think that was a good one right there. Yeah. I do think that they look similar.
Like, I told Gray, like, I was like, I could believe he was 15 at the beginning of the first one, and believe he was, like, 17 at the end of the second one.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I was like, I could... Which, I know that age in a lot of other books don't really matter, but it does in Dune, because he... Like, it's insane that he's 15.
It's also, like, the maturity level behind it.
Yeah, it's, and, like, that, and Jessica points it out, like, despite his education, his, like, he's a good fighter and all of these things, he's still... 15.
Yeah.
And so he still, like, hasn't killed anyone before, and, like, all of that. Anyways, I just felt like we needed to talk about adaptations, because we talked about the adaptation so much.
Well, and like at least I have said that I love the movies.
Yeah.
I think
me too.
The Dune movies are probably like top 10 movies for me. Maybe even top 5.
Dude, I remember going to see Dune Part 2 at least 4 times in theaters.
Oh, my sister and I, we went every week until it wasn't in the theater anymore.
Like, it was an incredible adaptation, now reading the book. But also, like, I don't know, like, I think it's a very interesting story, and I'm so glad someone spent time to really craft it into, like, life.
I know, me too. Dennis, what's his bucket?
Denny,
what's his bucket? Sorry.
Okay. We're gonna cut this out because we're gonna say this freaking right. I say Villanueva because I think of it in Spanish pronunciation, because we need to honor this man.
We do need to honor this man.
Enter. Oh, here we go. Pronunciation. Let's go.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. That's very French.
Denis Villeneuve.
Yep. There we go.
He deserves his flowers. He deserves an award. Why doesn't he have one yet? Who freaking knows?
I don't care, but he has the money he needs to make the next one. So
right?
I will give you it all.
He's so good. Yeah, I think he did a great job for what he had. I thought it was a great adaptation.
I also felt like this isn't so much like about book club stuff, but with adaptations, as a director, he could get what he needed out of the actors.
Yes.
And it looks beautiful, like whoever did, like Greg Fraser, who's the director of photography. It's like a science, the way he films. And then you had Hans Zimmer, who did music. And so I just feel like...
everything fell into place.
Because this was a story worth bringing to life and telling, and they put in the work for it, which I really like.
I know. This is one thing I love about books and movies, but it's like Dune is a story about a planet that has no water and spice and a guy that is on a journey to get power. But what I love about books and movies, it's also so much more than that. Yeah. Like, it's what we talked about, a story about justice and like hunt for power and like different relationships and politics. There's so much to it that I think the movie did a really good job at saying, hey, this is an important story to tell. Yeah. So we're going to tell it, and we're going to do it in the way that we can. Yeah. It's an adaptation, but I want more people to be able to know this story. Yeah. Because not everybody's going to read the book. No. But it's more accessible to watch the movie.
Exactly. And if you watch the movie, like, you get what you need to out of it. Yeah. That you would in the book. But if you read the book, it's just going to...
it's more.
It's just going to make it richer. That much richer. Yeah. But also, like, the resistance to power. Which I thought was important. Because Paul resists it for a long time. And then all of a sudden, it's, like, his only option. And that's argued. Some people say...
was it his only option?
People argue, like, it was his only option to get the Fremen, to get enough power to overthrow the Emperor, who arguably is corrupt.
Yes.
And is oppressing people.
Yeah.
So, like, just war theory, back to our Hunger Games episode, people think Paul's thinking that it was his only option was his only option. But...
was it? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one.
I don't know. I feel like I can see the argument, honestly, like, why they're like, he needed the Fremen backing to be able to have the power he needed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can see that. But going further after that, like releasing jihad because the houses didn't recognize you, I don't know about that.
Like maybe not that.
But nervous laugh. But anyways, we loved Dune. We loved our experience reading it. Thank you for joining us.
We're very excited. We're going to do Lord of the Rings next, which I'm so pumped for. And I'm really excited that we're doing Dune and Lord of the Rings back to back because Tolkien is known to not like Dune.
He's not a Frank Herbert fan.
He's not a Frank Herbert fan. And I'm just, because, I mean, the stories are totally different. Because Lord of the Rings is very obviously good versus evil.
Yeah.
And whereas Dune is like, well, real world isn't like that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, but I love both.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get into the other side of it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I don't know. Lord of the Rings is an important book to have on a book club list.
Like, the staple sci-fi. Now we're going to do the staple fantasy.
Yeah, we've done Harry Potter. We've done Dune.
Uh-huh.
Now we're doing Lord of the Rings. I think those are some of the major series out there.
Oh, 100%.
So
I don't know what we're going to do after that.
I know. So now I do need to reread these books, though.
I do, too. I did start rereading that.
Oh, no.
I'm on, like, page 4.
Okay, good. I'm like, girl, I haven't even... Look at the 3 books that I mentioned I've started reading. I'm not even going to get to those.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm not going to see those again until July, y'all.
Maybe even then. Who knows?
Oh, no.
After Lord of the Rings, we'll do just one book. We'll do something shorter.
What are we going to do?
One book
we gotta
that's
figure it out. But we really appreciate your support or anyone that listens.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, feel free to let us know any other like books that you want us to cover.
Yeah, because clearly we've only planned up until next month. So.
Yeah. So, and we're trying, and hopefully you'll see
we're approaching a year.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll see some new faces on here.
Yes.
That's one of our goals. But anyways.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for listening or watching. We will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye. These pasty legs of mine.